Recently, I had a long 3-day adventure rambling across the moor from north to south. And on my first night, due to a combination of a blasé attitude, half-arsed planning and bad weather, I was forced to sleep in a bivvy bag on the floor near Fernworthy Forest. All part of the fun. But then, just a few days later, an anonymous story started doing the rounds on the websites of most of the big newspapers. A black panther had been spotted on one of the forest paths. The terrified family did a runner, only to stumble into a half-eaten deer carcass before scrambling back to their car, followed by the sound of roaring. Did I have a lucky escape? This is far from the first time that the idea of big cats loose on Dartmoor has reared its feline head. In fact, Devon is the big cat capital of Britain, with nearly 700 sightings since records began. That's a lot of moggies. The second place county, for contrast, is Yorkshire, with just over 100. And Dartmoor, of course, is the hub of these Devon cat sightings, which seemingly started in the 1970s and continue all the way to the present day, showing no sign of abating. What's going on here? Welcome back to the Dartmoor podcast. I want to make this video a little bit different to what's already been said on this topic. Sure, I could smear myself in sardine oil, stick a kipper down my trousers and sneak around the moors in a pair of night vision goggles. I could poke at some poo, misidentify some footprints, or even download the sound of a leopard's roar and wake up looking scared. But that's been done before. My word, it's been done before. And I think we all know that I wouldn't find anything conclusive. Because, and I hate to say it, there are no big cats on Dartmoor. Probably. Now, if you're a believer in big cats in the UK, please keep watching, be open-minded and give me a chance to state my case. And if you still believe at the end of this video, we can have a good old bicker in the comments. I'm already at a bit of a disadvantage, of course, because it's impossible to prove a negative. So I can never say with absolute certainty that there isn't a beast of Dartmoor. Also, I'm at a disadvantage filming-wise, as it's difficult to make an engaging video about something which I have no footage of. So I've decided to take a day trip to the one place where there are big cats on the moor. Dartmoor Zoo. And this is the perfect place to introduce my first issue with the big cat theory. Where do they come from? When a real big cat, well, a medium-sized cat, a lynx, escaped from Dartmoor Zoo in 2016, they immediately reported it and a hunt for the escaped feline ensued. Flavio had chewed his way out of his hutch and ran off onto the moors where he spent 3 weeks inexpertly eating lambs before he was recaptured in a baited trap. The jaguar once escaped from Dartmoor Zoo too, back in 2006, but luckily it jumped straight in with the tigers, with whom it had some beef, and proceeded to try and maul them through a skylight of their tiger house. A year later, a wolf escaped Dartmoor Zoo too. Worrying pattern emerging here. The staff at the zoo noticed it was missing, and went to get it as it trotted happily through a local village. When animals escape from zoos, the people who work in the zoo notice. And rather than sheepishly keeping stum, they tend to mention it, no matter how angry their boss would be. News gets out, and the animal is recaptured or killed. So where else could these animals come from? It's a long old swim from Africa. Pets? I don't have any official figures to hand, but I don't expect there are many Tiger Kings knocking about on Dartmoor these days. And even if there were, wouldn't they, like the zookeepers, let us know if an animal escaped, rather than attempting a cover-up and getting into even more trouble when little Timmy becomes a snack? This is especially important as cats that are used to humans, such as those from zoos or collections, would be far more dangerous than their wild cousins, who are naturally wary of people. Ah, I hear you cry. But what about the Dangerous Wild Animal Act of 1976? That explains everything. Well, don't worry, I was getting to that. The argument goes among big catters that in the 1960s and 70s it was much more popular for people to have exotic pets, an unregulated trade in reticulated pythons. People freely owned caimans, camels, capybaras and caracals. You could pop into Harrods and buy a cheetah. I'm not kidding. Then, in 1976, the government released a law which, despite not banning ownership of these animals, tightened up the rules. You need someone to come and inspect the conditions they were kept in, and perhaps improve the safety of the cages and give them injections and God knows what else. A lot of expensive hassle that the sort of person who buys a cheetah on a whim probably couldn't be arsed with. So, the story goes, a lot of them were just released into the wild, especially in remote places like Dartmoor. Now, for what it's worth, I think there could be some truth in this. Though I'm not sure how common a practice it would have been, it's still pretty damn irresponsible to hurl a mountain lion out on the side of the road near Widdicombe Primary School. But my main problem with this narrative to explain the presence of big cats is that it's 2023. A big cat has a lifespan of at most 20 years, and probably less on a cold and windswept moor. As the 70s were 50 years ago, are we really claiming that there's a breeding population of these animals? And that we're on the third or fourth generation of Dartmoor beasts? This would require compatible pairs of animals bringing up playful and noisy cubs who then reach sexual maturity and inbreed, and then for this cycle to repeat one or two more times, all without any conclusive evidence ever surfacing. It seems unlikely at best. Right, we've looked at where they come from, now where do they go? Cotton Eye Joe. There isn't a lot of cover on Dartmoor. It's a famously open and exposed place. But actually, the large conifer plantations like Fernworthy and Belliver, for example, could, I suppose, house a very sneaky big cat. The rows of trees are dark and dense, and a stealthy animal wouldn't have much of a problem in keeping ahead of any humans trying to find them. But my belief is that even if we didn't see them directly, there would be far more evidence of them. For a start, a cat's got to eat. And if we're talking about leopards, pumas and jaguars, the most common sorts of sighting, then we're talking large prey. Notice I'm not using the word panther. I'll get to that a bit later. There'd be dead sheep everywhere. And yes, I know there are dead sheep everywhere, but I mean loads of dead sheep everywhere. There'd be dead sheep up trees, for heaven's sake. These cats eat well over 1 kilo of meat a day and don't have fridge freezers, so we're talking sheep genocide, especially if we believe in the breeding population. Also, as anyone who has a pet kitty will tell you, cats kill for fun and enjoy chasing anything that runs away from them. And our poor Dartmoor sheepies turn tail at the drop of a hat. They'd be a super easy target for a big cat. Dartmoor's farmers would not only have noticed, but would be kicking up an almighty stink about it. And what about other types of evidence? Poo, for instance. Big cats like to plop their cat scat in obvious places. They are marking their territory and letting others know they're around. And despite the fact that you can scientifically test a turd nowadays, I'm yet to see one example of a verified DNA sample of big cat plops in the UK. Footprints? Again, there'd be loads of them. Dartmoor's a muddy place, and cats walk along game trails and paths the same as everyone else. Ah, but George, there is evidence. Look at this blurry photo. How about this video of sheep standing around while their mate is devoured? Look at the size of the tail on this one. I hate to say it, but once you take into consideration the arguments I've already put forward, you've got to go with a balance of probability. It's undeniably more likely that someone would fake a photo, plant a puma poo or forge a footprint than that there really is a big cat loose on the moors. It's more likely to be fake. Someone's doing it for attention or just out of mischief. Not necessarily the cat hunters themselves, mind you, but some cheeky so-and-so enjoying giving them the runaround. And I've not even got onto the best piece of big cat denying evidence. I believe I can all but prove that most sightings are fakes by using maths. Now, I'm an English teacher, so I don't like using maths any more than the next person, but hear me out, because it's a rather elegant debunk. When you picture a big cat loose in Britain, what do you see? I'm betting a lot of you are seeing a big black cat. A black panther. Well, here's where things get a bit interesting, because there's no such species as a panther. Panther is a sort of widely adopted term for a leopard or jaguar that's born melanistic. Animals born with an excess of melanin, the pigment that makes their fur dark. Think of it as being the opposite of being an albino, although that's a bit oversimplified. And what proportion of jaguars and leopards are born this way? About 10%. So for every sighting of a big black cat, we should really have 9 sightings of big spotty ones. And that definitely isn't the case. It's far closer to the other way round, with 3/4 of UK big cat sightings being melanistic. It's mathematically highly improbable. It's mathematically highly improbable. So, there are no big cats, and yet people keep seeing big cats. If anything, to me, this makes this topic even more fascinating. People aren't just seeing wild panthers in Britain, they're seeing imaginary wild panthers. Well, if we charitably ignore the possibility of deliberate fakes, we are left with misidentification. And this isn't as silly or embarrassing as it sounds. We're probably hardwired in an evolutionary sense to be on the lookout for big cats, so it's not entirely surprising that we sometimes see them where they aren't. Where man-eating pussycats are involved, it's better to be overcautious after all. A big dog, a fat domestic cat, or a sinister-looking branch could all freak you out in the wrong light. And Dartmoor's a weird place. The pixies are always messing around with the perspective and scale of things. But I think there's even more to it than that. I think there's a deep psychological reason for us seeing fictional big cats everywhere. And that's because we want it to be true. I know I do. Britain, especially England, is one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world. There's not a lot of forest, and you can't walk far without crossing a road or stumbling into a pub. And we don't have any charismatic megafauna. We hunted it all to death hundreds of years ago. What's the most exciting thing you're going to see if you're bumbling about the countryside? A badger? Even then, only if you're lucky. Somewhere, deep down, we know we've lost our biggest and wildest nature and it's not coming back. Our ancestors deprived us the chance to feel that thrill of sharing the land with apex predators like bears, wolves and lynx. And there's a subconscious part of us that so badly wants a little bit back, that will convince ourselves, against all logic, that maybe, just maybe, there's a black panther out there, stalking the gullies and stone walls around Hound Tor. In conclusion, I appreciate that I'm going to look pretty silly if my half-eaten remains are found up a tree. But I'm not going to lose any of my wild camping sleep worrying about big cats on the moor, and don't think you need to panic either. And look, there's one argument I can't really shoot down, and that's if you personally have seen a puma on the moor, and that you're absolutely sure about what you've seen, then I can't take that away from you. Maybe I'm just jealous. I'd love to see one. Thanks for listening, everyone. See you next time.